of programs and initiatives. We'll talk more about the last, or it's right there. We have our last of part 3 or of part 4 on June 2nd, June 3rd, depending on where you are in the world. We have a number of other initiatives that anyone is welcome to participate in, whether you are from an APRU member university or not. That includes in November, our virtual Global Health Conference. It's our 15th annual conference and the theme is Urban Health. The abstract submission for that is opening on June 3rd. In addition, we have working groups, we have a case competition, a student poster contest, and a number of other initiatives. So I will put our website in the chat, and hopefully you all signed up for the listserv so you can hear about all the other things that we have going on as part of our program. So this is, let me start here. Then let's go ahead and get started on what we're here to talk about today. So I would like to direct you to the bios of our speakers and facilitators. And it's my pleasure to introduce first Ellie Vandegrift, who is Program Director for the Global Science Education Initiatives in the Division of Global Engagement at the University of Oregon. She is trained as an ecologist and has taught university level life science courses, as well as led STEM education professional development programs and supported curricular and pedagogical reform to make science interesting, engaging, and relevant to improve students' learning experiences. She has facilitated lots of STEM education and communication workshops in the US and with global partners, and has received a number of awards for her teaching excellence. Her social media info is on her bio, so please feel free to contact her. And our second speaker, as I mentioned, is Yatsawi Saifa, who earned his doctoral degree in curriculum and instruction from Southern Illinois University in the US. He has served for years as an assistant professor in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction at Chulalongkorn University in Thailand. And his area of expertise is in curriculum studies. He has gained experience in curriculum development at the institution and national settings, and has been working on curriculum development under the outcome-based education and competency-based curriculum for a number of years at all educational levels. So I am very happy to welcome both of our facilitators. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Melissa, for the very nice introduction. I'm glad to be here this evening. A warm welcome to those of you who are joining us for the first time, and a warm welcome to those of you who are returning. Good evening, good morning. Our goals for today, the big picture goals, are to provide pedagogical, technological, and peer support to faculty across the APRU network and beyond who are teaching remotely. And our goal has been from the start of this series that we started last August to create opportunities for APRU affiliated faculty to connect and share resources and experiences. The format for today, we're going to spend approximately 30 minutes with some panel conversation and discussion. If you have been to our sessions before, this one will be a little bit different because we actually have activities built into this first 30 minutes. You're going to get to put on your student hats today. We'll then have about 30 minutes for small group breakout session, and then the time remaining for large group discussion back here together. We are going to take advantage of some Zoom features today. Many of you have already found the Zoom chat. If you haven't already introduced yourself in the chat, I would encourage you to do so. I don't think we have a poll. Do we have a poll? We don't have a poll today, but we will use Breakout Rooms Many of you have your video and audio turned off when we go into breakout rooms. If you're in a space where you can turn those on, please do and participate. And I love having a little notepad for myself to take notes when I go to workshops like this. I hope you find things that you're going to write down as well. So to get started, in the chat, could you please share what types of practical skills do you want your students to learn? All right, in the chat, what types of practical skills do you want your students to learn? All right, Melissa writes critical thinking. Terry writes note-taking. Jackie says cultural competency. Ming Lee says self-study. Tracy says communication and health risk management. Lydia types decision-making. Tina says team coordination. Catherine includes critical thinking, conflict resolution, communication again. Sheba says solving and critical thinking, practical skills, critical thinking, independent learning. Tamara says finding information, independent thinking, disaster preparedness, self-study, communication. Oh, the list goes on. So many things that we want our students to learn. And it's interesting that our practical skills are sometimes things that feel like they're hard to teach. What does it mean to be a critical thinker? Great. Technology, leadership, critical thinking again, precision in asking questions. Excellent. Well, I want to talk through some classroom applications today, and then Yatsui is going to talk through some big picture frameworks around education and how we might think about teaching these skills. Let me ask you another question. What are skills that are essential for students to learn in college? You just told us what skills you want your students to be able to develop. Are there essential skills from that list? Maybe they're the same. Okay, writing, judgment skills. What else is essential for students to learn in college, in the university? Global citizenship, nursing skills, communication again, asking questions. Great. Independent thinking, self-learning, preparedness. All right, excellent. This is from a study from a few years ago from the American Association of Colleges and Universities, and that is a large organization across the United States. And they polled their members, and then they polled businesses that have hired students who have graduated from an AAC&U university to look at what are the top skills. And there are many of the things that you mentioned. So thinking critically, communicating verbally, orally, ethical judgment, teamwork, working independently. I saw that one as well. Generating ideas and solutions. I saw that. I saw communicating and writing. And then I saw the real world settings. A couple of the nursing people said that. So many of the things that you're thinking about as practical skills are the same skills that employers, at least in the US, say that they want to hire for. Well, I do have a Zoom poll. Let me ask you this poll. I'm going to launch the poll. Which of these skills are the most difficult for students to learn? In your estimation, as you're teaching students, which are the most difficult for students to learn? Let's see, about half of you have voted. So if you want to take another 10 seconds or so to get your vote in. Going to end the poll and share the results with you. So among this group here, they're kind of spread out your answers, but the largest percentage is that 34% of you think that critical thinking, while it's essential, we saw that on the poll, we saw that in the chat, that it's difficult for students to learn. I agree. It's a hard thing for students to learn because it's multi-layered. This is from an additional study that was looking at employers and what they ranked as essential skills. So essential skills are across the bottom, the percentage of employers that said that on the axis. And then on the y-axis are the percentage of what employers say are the most difficult skills to hire for. And so critical thinking and problem solving are in this category where they're both essential and they're the hardest to hire. So in addition to you saying that these are hard skills for students to learn, they're hard skills for employers to find that students have, which to my mind means that it's a place that as educators, we should really spend some time to make sure that we are creating opportunities for students to build these essential skills. I want to take you through an example that I use in my class, and it's a way for my students to practice critical thinking and problem solving. This is for a non-science majors course that I taught. The title of the course is Science, Policy, and Biology. And so we look at big topics such as stem cells, cloning, genetically modified organisms, and human genetics. And within all of that, I want students to develop the critical thinking skills when they're reading the newspaper. How will they judge if something is real or if something is phony information? And I didn't mean to make a pun, but I just did. So this is the several studies that I present to students. So I'm going to switch a little bit into the way that I would present this to students and give you an opportunity to pretend to be my students. Quinn, as I'm doing this, could you get people into groups of 4? Because there's going to be a moment where I'll want to put people in breakout rooms. So the question that we're posed with in this problem to develop critical thinking skills is the question of, do cell phones cause an increased risk of cancer? There are some studies that have said that cell phones cause an increased risk in cancer. And these are about 10 years old now. But here's a study that looked at a meta-analysis in trends across many different studies and found increased incidences of cell phones use and some types of cancers in some populations. Excuse me. And so overall from this meta-analysis, their study was that there was a modest increase in gliomal brain cancer in groups of people who were high cell phone users. You can see how old the phones are now. So that would be one thing I would want students to start to think about. Is it different now than it was when these images were taken 10 years ago? This previous study came out in May 11th, 2011, and then in October 20th of 2021, here was a separate newspaper article that said no cell phone cancer link in a large study. And this was a study that looked at, let me go to the next thing. It was a very targeted study in Denmark with 360,000 cell phone users, and they found no increased risk of cancer among the users in this study who use cell phones for a longer time period. All right, so these are 2 pieces of information that students have now been presented with. There's this WHO story that says cell phone risk can cause cancer, cell phone use and cancer are related. And then another study that says there is no compilation. So the question that I would then ask students is what is going on here? We would do clickers in class. Is this something where A, the media likes to stir up controversy? We actually know that cell phones do not cause cancer. Or is it B, cell phones are known to cause cancer, but the cell phone companies don't want us to know? Or C, most studies are based on correlations and the studies have reported conflicting findings. Feel free to put your answer in the chat to what you think. But I have students do this and then we look at the poll and we talk about it. So here's the question and the activity, and we're going to take a couple of minutes and you're going to be students and answer this question. What would you like to know to solve this scientific controversy? So we're going to put you into these groups that Quinn just designed, and with your group, I want you to design a possible experiment to test if cell phones cause cancer. This is a really short activity. You have 3 minutes. 3 minutes in your group to design an experiment to test if cell phones cause cancer. These are the same instructions I give my students. So Quinn, if you want, could you whisk us away to the groups? If you are still in the main room, I would invite you to please join your group so that you can have this quick conversation with your group members about an experiment that you could create to test whether cell phones cause cancer. And if for some reason you've decided not to go to a group, why don't you put some ideas in the chat? Quinn, can you do me a quick favor and see if there's anyone who ended up in a group by themselves, and if they're by themselves, move them to another group? Thank you. And a couple of you have chatted me about why you're staying in the main room. Totally fine, totally get it. Life goes on. With dinner and commuting all at the same time on other sides of the world. Well, for those of you who are unable to join a breakout room, if you want to put something in the chat, that's fine too. Liliana, did you have a question? It looked like you raised your hand.
Hello, Ellie. This is Tracy. Can you hear me?
Hi, Tracy. I can hear you.
I think I was put in breakout room 4, but three of us got into it, and then we got redirected out again because it was only limited to one minute. So we all came back out again.
Okay.
So there's another lady. I think there's. Oh, I'm very sorry. I couldn't pronounce the other gentleman in the group, but another lady. Oh, I think I've just got a message from Quinn. I think I'll be sent back soon.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, Quinn, this was super fast. Do you want to close the groups? We'll give people 1 more minute to finish up. Oh, it looks like maybe everybody's back here in the main room and maybe the breakout rooms didn't work quite so well. Well, let me show you some of the possible answers. It seems like the breakout rooms kept closing, so let's hope that that doesn't happen when we do our next breakout room session. Thank you for your patience with Zoom. Let me show you some of the examples that students have come up with. Oh, you know what? We might be having there we go. Zoom stopped working for me too. So here are some of the ways that my students, and again, these are non-science majors, so they're studying other things such as education or philosophy or history. And they said things such as take 2 groups of mice and expose them to cell phones or not. Here was another idea where students said tape cell phones to 100 people's heads and measure the radiation for 30 days. So then we get to talk about, is that ethical? Is it practical? And then here was a third idea, measure radiation levels from different phones, whether or not they're taped to somebody's head or not. Again, we go on in this conversation together to talk about the difference between correlation and causation. And how do we know what's good information? I also then always bring in the more recent information. This is from the last time I taught this course. This is from November of 2018. Some cell phone risks find some evidence to link to cancer, at least in male rats. So then we talk about using animal models, and we then think about the testing. It'd be a perfect time to talk about vaccine trials, for example, now if I were teaching this course. And then we also look at what's been really recent. This article was just retracted. It was another one that said that there was a meta-analysis that cell phones cause cancer, and it was just retracted earlier this month. And the authors say in the retraction that they didn't have enough evidence to actually hold up the data and the claims that they made in this. But if you look at the news, this got a lot of splash in the news. So this is an example of critical thinking with our students and using that critical thinking to examine scientific studies, and then carry that forward to the type of decision-making that happens in policy that can be based on data that people are understanding or not understanding. Great, I'm gonna turn this over to, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Yatsui now for the next part of our presentation here about domains of learning.
All right, thank you, Ellie. So may I share my own screen now? Okay. Anyone can see this? Oh, perfect. All right, so hello, everyone. So before I start my informations, I would like, so before I talk about the pedagogical techniques for developing learners' skills, I would like to share some information about the learner skills so that I could make sure that all of you already make sense about the concept of learner skills, and then we will talk about the technique skills later on. So, okay, according to early presentations, she showed us like several types of necessary skills, especially for a group of college students. Although those above mentioned skills would be called as a skills for the same, as a skills the same, but they actually have something indifferent. So please take a look at the slide that I am showing you right now. So you can see a number of learner different skills, such as reading and writing, presenting informations, resilience, playing music instruments, skateboarding, problem solving, driving a car, number calculating, selecting attention, and or focusing mastery, and even like listening and speaking a foreign language, and even like operating a machine. So do you think these skills are the same specifically? Yes or no? It actually, you know, to define the terminology skills, it can be defined as the abilities to do something. But with that abilities, the individual needs to process some informations before they perform or they do something. So definitely this term showing right now could be called as the skills. But please know that they are not the same skills actually. So generally, I would categorize these skills into three groups of learnings domains according to Bloom taxonomies. So which I call them as the first one, I call them cognitive domain. And the second one, I call it affective domain. And the last one is psychomotor domains. So you can see from the slide, I bring those skills from the previous slide and categorize them into three groups according to the learning domains. So now can you notice something that they share in common within the same group of learning domain? Just take a look at the first one, the cognitive domain. So reading and writing, problem solving, calculating, selecting attention, presenting information, critical thinking, the favorite one from the early presentations earlier. And the last one, listening and speaking Mandarin. So can you see something that they share in common? So you can see that in terms of the cognitive domain, the skills that being under this domain, the individual needs to use like the set of informations or the knowledge or even the content in specific area, and apply that knowledge or the skills to perform in somehow of abilities. That's the type that I group them together within the cognitive domain. And just take a look for the second one, the affective domain. So I group resilient, making friends or social skills, collaborative working or teamwork, and emotional management. I group them together as an affective domain because I believe that in terms of the skills under the affective domain, the individual needs to manipulate something internally themselves, and they bring that type of the trait to perform something. That's the affective domain. And the last one, psychomotor domain. So let's take a look at group like driving a car, skateboarding, operating a machine, and the last one playing instruments. So you can see that the skill under this domain, the individual needs to use like some knowledge, some body of the knowledge, and they have to incorporate with a physical movement to do something. That's the concept that I group them together as a physical skills. So I would like to see that basically naturally learners learning could be explained in 3 types of domains, right? But I would like to define like the key concept for each domain first. So take a look for the first one, which is may I back to the last the prior slide, and I need to have like laser pointer. Okay, so take a look at the first one, the cognitive domain. So basically, cognitive domain can be called as cognitive abilities, cognitive skills, or even like intellectual skills. So basically, it refers to the way that individual process related information to build up or perform to be able to do something. And the next one is skill that I call effective skills or effective domain, which are the one that individual would manage, organize, and manipulate themselves mentally. It means that they typically use something internally to be able to do or to perform something. While the last one is I call psychomotor ability or physical skills, which is particularly given to the performance that individual coordinate their brain functions with his or her gross and fine motors. That's the difference from the 2 earlier one. The physical skill refer to the performance involving the movement among their arms, their hands, and their fingers, and the feet. So how to teach these 3 types of domains. So please take a look at this slide. So natural learnings could be explained into 3 types of the domain, right? So it means that whenever students learn something and what they have learned must be at least one aspect among this domain. So let's make sense the concept of each domain once again. So beginning with the cognitive domain, this is the most commonly used domain in regular classrooms in all levels. It deals with the knowledge, applications, and intellectual sides of learnings. And our today classroom activity pretty pay much attention to the knowledge and understanding aspects and ignore like a higher level of the cognitive learnings. And in order to teach or to develop the cognitive skills, so teachers needs to share information and encouraging students to think like methodologically, and also by making use discussions, debate, presentations, and asking thoughts provoking questions that teachers can extend the knowledge of the learners and focus their attentions, develop problem solving and decisions making skills. And the next one will be the affective domain. So basically it's the effect, include the objectives relating to interests and attitudes and values related to learners, the informations, and to develop the effective skills to the learners. We have to offer opportunities to students to more interact with the peer, the teachers, or even the role model and at the classroom. And the last one, psychomotors, focusing on more motor skills and actions and require a physical coordination, like I say earlier. Please note that the fact that physical skills is not purely performed in nature without mental processing. So this form of knowledge are learned gradually by repetitions of the actions. And once the students get learned, their skills become natural and permanent. And this skill seems to be identical but unique to any particular person. So that the more they just use it or practice it, the more they could function the skills really well. That's the the key. And so as a teachers, we have to let the students to practice and learn through experiential learning. So you can see that if you are going to teach the cognitive skills to your students, it requires certain type of instruction strategies. But in the same way, if you are going to teach the students to functions like a physical skills, you have to make sure that your teaching strategies being selected adequately so that the students could be able to develop their skills perfectly. So the key concept that I'm trying to make to you here is that please choose the right strategies to teach your students particular domains of learning. So you have to know first that which type of the domain that you are going to teach for the students, and then choose the right one, right? Okay, take a look the next slide. So within the domain, within each domain, there will be like the different levels of them learn the skills. For example, like this is the different levels of the cognitive domain, starting from the lowest one, like remembering, the next one, understanding, applying, analyzing, and evaluating, and the highest one will be the creating one. So back to early presentations, she shows us a lot about the cognitive skills. For example, like critical thinking, which is require a lot of analyzing and evaluating one, like making decisions, and about like problem solving. Also the same skills that need to apply like a higher order thinking skills from within the cognitive domain. So this is the concept that I would like to show you, that within cognitive domain, there are like different levels of the cognitive skills. And in the same manner, this is the psychological, psychomotor skills. There are like different levels of the psychomotor skills, starting from the lowest one, that imitation. The imitations mean that the behavior or the performance that students can perform, but they perform by watching or imitating or copying, like the teachers, the role model of their peers. And the next level one is the manipulation. Manipulations mean that they can do it, they can perform it, but while they perform what they're doing, they need to rely on like the instructions, or that they have to following the direction strictly so that they can make it successfully. And the next one, another level is precisions, which mean that the performance become more exact and actions are more precise. The next one will be articulations. It seems that they like they functions it really well, and they can incorporate like several skills together in harmonious way. And then highest level ones for the psychomotor skills is naturalization. This is the high levels of performance achieved with the actions become second nature. It means that students can perform something like automatically, and they can perform is that their character, things like that. So the reason that I show you the different types of learning, so I would like to conclude that the more you let the student rehearsing or practicing or keep doing that with your coaching or guiding very closely, the more the student skill could be developed in the higher levels. So that's especially the important concept here. Like I say that when we talk about the developing learners' skills, it's not happen like automatically. It needs to be trained. It needs to be practiced in the appropriate way. So teaching psychomotor skill is more challenging, right? As well as like cognitive skills, because you need to make sure that student would have enough like attempt processing information enough to perform it, right, or to act it. And also it seems to be like to bring the information to perform, like it's really so in order to teach them the skills, you have to make sure that you provide them enough like information to perform something correctly. Okay, so I would like to share some research findings conducted by my grad students. So these students explore the synthesized step of teaching a practical skills to learners. So basically there are like 6 steps. So the first one start with the preparations one. The preparations one is just like giving an introductions and ensuring that students are ready to perform or to learn some processing informations. And the next one will be the knowledge dissemination. So we make sense with our students or learners about like the step by step, like the procedural knowledge to them in order to perform something, right? And explain that like the necessary information, so directions, instructions or things to know before starting to do something. That's the knowledge disseminations. And the third one is really important. So we have to demonstrate the way to perform the types of skills. And as a teachers, we have to demonstrate so that the students can observe our performance like step by step and like in details. And the fourth one, we have to let them practice it. And under the practicing, we have to make sure that we pay attention to that practice and we observe the practice like very closely so that we can give them like immediate feedback or comments. And the next one is the presentations. The presentations, we just let them present their practicing the skills practicing on their own. And then we as a teachers, we have to observe so that we could like give them the information or collect the information for the next one. The last one or the next one that the sixth one is evaluations and reflection. So after the students can present the practice, so they have to be given like a comment toward what needs to be maintained if they do it really well, or what needs to be improved for the next time. So you can see that according to this 6 step, you can see that the key to success is that the teachers and student interactions is very important. So that's the key to success in order to teaching practical skills to learners successfully. So, however, it seems that unfortunately the pandemic situations emerging right now globally does not allow us to teach our students like practical skills with that manner. Teachings by keeping the close interactions between teachers and students become limited right now and challenging and quite difficult because of the social distancing principles. So before I present the finding from the graduate students, which would be the solutions to decrease that barrier. So I would like to do some activities, and please, once you are please give me your reflections after your completions of each activities. Are you ready? So before I sharing you the first activities, I would like you to grab some sheets of paper like a square like this. I'm gonna ask you to do something. So the first activities, I will give you 3 minutes to follow the directions of how to make a paper bird or origami. So during you are floating a paper, I will not explain or say anything about the instructions, and strictly follow the provide directions on showing the pictures. Showing pictures is the only resource that you have. Okay, so I will give you 3 minutes from now on. Are you ready? Okay, I'm gonna count 1, 2, 3, go. I'm gonna count for 3 minutes. And while you follow the directions strictly, once we end up the time, we will see your bird. Okay. 2 more minutes. Okay, 1 more minute, folks. Okay, all right. So thumbs up for the first activities. And then, so, oops, what is going on? Why I cannot go to the next one? Okay, as a learner, how do you feel that after finishing the first activity? So because of the time, so please share some thoughts on the chat box, and then we're going to come back later. So I have another one, but I would like to run through it really fast a little bit because of the time. So the next activity, actually, I intended to show you the video clip, and then I'm going to show you, but I'm going to So it seems that we take a look like the whole video clip, and we make like the second one of the paper bird origami one. So I would like to ask you, like, as a learner, how do you feel after finishing the first activities? How do you feeling during the second activities, which we're supposed to doing that differ from the first one? Just type in like your thoughts on the chat box. I'm gonna see it. Okay, all right. Disappointed for the first one. Pressure, right? Frustrating because you didn't finish, right? Because of the times, or even like following just only the picture is pretty hard one, right? Challenging, frustrating, feel better watching someone else to do it first, right? All right, so that's the key that I would like to reaffirm to you, that in order to teach like the practical skills, teachers and students interactions is very important, right? So we will much feel better for the second one, that we learn to perform something, and we can have like someone to be closing with us and showing how to do it that closely. So you can see that the feeling is different. So that's the key. So these two activities important, like teacher-students interactions, it's very important. Without any explanations from the teachers who are practicing some skills, you could acknowledge that it's very difficult that the skills could be developed, right? So I'm gonna jump to the next slide. So in terms of the pandemic situations, it seems that we have to maintain teacher-students interactions within the remote classroom setting or virtual classroom setting. So the finding from my students affirm that the 6th step could be still workable, but teachers may have to like adjust or apply some tools to students so that the interactions can keep along with the 6th step, and we could make sure that we can work with the students closely. So the tool to be used should be like any platform that allowing the communications with the student in 2 ways, and we could exchange demonstrations video clip so that the students could like to see the demonstrations, and they would make a record of their clip on their performance and send it back to us so that we can give them like a feedback. The 2 possible include like the Zoom like we are doing right now, or even you can use the platform like the Line of Facebook, Microsoft Teams, on Google Meet, or even like the applications that's called Seesaw, so that the student can upload and download the video clip that we are exchanged among the classrooms together. So the key answer, the key point here is that the 6th step supposed to be remain, but we have to find some platforms supporting our students' learning. So the last slide that I would like to share to you is about the assessment. So as a teachers, when we teach them, we have to make sure that we assess them or evaluate them. In order to assess the students' practical skills, I would recommend you to using like a scoring rubric, so that within the scoring rubric is really helpful a lot, because it helps us to make a decisions or make a judgment toward the students' performance with objectivity and without any bias. And also, if you show the rubric or what the expectations to your students before you let them perform something, so the students will learn what to be expected, and they would perform it even with that properly. So I show you like 2 types of the rubrics. The first one is an analytical rubrics, and then another, which is we have to break down like the criterion or the aspect and see like different level from each level or aspect. And another one is the holistic rubrics, which is you like you incorporate in all dimensions or aspect together and rank it from the lowest one to the highest one. And I think that's all for my presentations. I have to apologize about the times, and I'm going to go back to Ellie to do the next one. All right, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. There's some good conversation in the chat too about how do we teach and think about these domains and how do they interact. And I made a bird, sort of. We are going to go into our. I can show it again. Here's my bird. Here's my bird. It's got wings. We are going to go into our breakout rooms now. I'm going to put the questions into the chat. So when we go into breakout rooms, and I think Quinn's going to make rooms that probably have about 8 people in them, 6 to 8. We're going to choose a person to be your timekeeper and a person to be your facilitator to get the conversation going. Make sure that each person has an opportunity to introduce themselves with their name and their institution. You can share your discipline too. It's always fun to see. And then we've got 4 questions here. 1, how do you already help students develop practical skills in your courses? 2, think about the do cell phones cause cancer example, and what similar types of scenarios do you include in your classes? And how did this activity that we did allow you to practice the 3 domains? And then you could think about both activities. You could think about the origami activity. You could think about the cell phone activity. How did those allow you to practice those 3 domains? And then the last question for you is how do you, or could you, if you don't already have an idea, use the 3 domains of learning in your courses? And again, tying it back to those key skills that we want students to learn, critical thinking and problem solving or writing or communication, trying to tie those things you said you want students to learn with the ways that students learn. We are going to stay in breakout rooms for 25 minutes. So timekeepers, you have 25 minutes. That'll be 20 after the hour, wherever you are in the world. And Quinn, are we ready for breakout rooms? Great. We'll see you back here in 25 minutes. Closed. People are rejoining the session. Glad to have you back here. Would love to spend a few minutes and hear a little bit of reporting from what happened in your conversations. Would somebody be willing to volunteer to share one highlight from your conversation? Oh, Wendy, I'm going to read yours from the chat. Thank you. Wendy's team had several people who were typing in, which was great, having their conversation. They talked about developing critical thinking and talked about how important it is to develop creativity among teachers, among students too, I would say, but among teachers, how to be creative in teaching given the current situation. We can't teach using the same conventional methods. How creative the teachers will be determines the success of education post-pandemic. It's interesting that you say that, Wendy, because as Melissa and I have started to think about our next session together and thinking about the pandemic, we've been thinking a lot about this resiliency and creativity and what happens. What have we learned that we will apply post-pandemic when universities are back in physical classrooms? Great, thank you. So that was a comment that Wendy put in the chat. I'd love to hear a reflection from another couple of groups. We have just a few minutes left together. Yatsui, would you like to share a reflection from your group? A couple of key ideas?
Of course. So our groups just have share the case study. So we're starting from asking individuals member to share their samples, teaching practical skills, and very first case studies to be shared dealing with the cognitive skills, practical skill that dealing with under the cognitive domain. For example, calculating, mathematic problem solving, like a language skill. So the member that our group does share, they just raising the sample of using the students' various questions and material. For example, teaching language skills, reading skills. We have to use several types of the passage and using different type of the questions so that the students would have chance to practice the various type of the questions as much as they can, right? And we also have a teacher from the secondary schools sharing about teaching the playing music instrument. So it quite follow 6 steps that I have shared earlier. So the teachers have to send the video clip as a demo to his students, sorry, and then he lets his students to perform according to the video clip, and afterward the students will send him back the video clip, and he shares that there are pros and cons of doing that within a remote classroom, because the disadvantage one is that it takes time a little bit, not a little bit, it takes much time to play and to see individual student video clip of playing the music instruments. But but it's a good thing is that as a teachers, we can acknowledge and we can see individual performance. Individual students' performance, because we can see their individual clip at a time. So there are pro and con doing that, but to be honest, it's quite challenging. Teaching during the remote classroom, but it also workable. Using the top technological devices is still a workable. That's the part that we have shared, Ellie.
Great, thank you so much. As I was jumping around between all of the rooms, I think I did hear a key theme of challenge, that this in thinking about this particular questions, there are a lot of challenges that individuals have faced. Liliana includes, Ming Lee says in the chat that after the pandemic, maybe things will go back to convention. It's hard to say. What are we learning that we're going to apply? Again, we'll talk about that in 2 weeks. And then Liliana writes, members of her group shared their ideas, such as using discussions, playing roles, using activities, scenarios, case studies, and recording videos. Excellent. So thinking about ways to leverage technology and keep our students engaged. I'm looking at the time, and I want to add one more question, one more chat question for you to think about, which is, what's one idea from today that you want to use in your courses? Please go ahead and type that in the chat. One idea from today that you want to use in your courses. Michael writes, members of his group recognize the need to be creative in redesigning courses and exposing students to international materials and experiences, and to include reflection sessions with students. That's what we just are doing, reflection. Jane writes, keep more students engaged. Melissa, using theory to develop assignments. Benelin says, maybe I can try role playing in my food analysis class. Great. Joan says that I'd like to try integrating dancing and singing in my physics class. Joan, send me an email. I have a colleague who teaches a physics of rock and roll class and a physics of sound and music. I'll put you in touch if you'd like. I don't know, there's a lot of singing or dancing, but a lot of music playing. Michelle writes, good teacher-student communication to increase learning, increase that social connection between each other. Tracy writes, our group brought up creative and fun ways to teach, like a song. And Maria Elizabeth writes, focusing feedback on positive aspects as well as to encourage and motivate students. Excellent. We'll let you continue reflection for a moment. I'm going to share my screen again. And as a reminder, this is session part 4 of our Teaching in Virtual Environments series that we have been running since last September or August. Now I can't remember which month we started in, late last summer. And next, in 2 weeks will be our 12th session, and Melissa and I are going to spend that time reflecting a little bit on a year of teaching in virtual environments. And I think we'll spend some time talking about resiliency, especially because what we have seen and heard from these sessions has been resiliency, and it's been hope. And so we want to take and think about that. How do we leverage that as we move forward, finishing an academic year and moving into a next academic year for many of us? Depending on your time schedule, some of you are in the middle of an academic year too that will not end at this break that many of us have coming up. Melissa, any final words?
Thank you so much for that. That was really a very enjoyable session. So thank you to both of our facilitators for helping us think about ways to develop learners' practical skills. We really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who joined today. It's great to have such a good group. I listened to some discussions, and lots of interesting things were coming up, and also shared challenges. So thank you. I look forward to seeing you all back here on June 2nd, 3rd for our final session of part 4. Take care, everyone.
Have a great evening or a great morning.
You too, Ellie. Bye.
Thank you, Ellie. Bye. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.